Good afternoon to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? It is Friday, the 12th of December. It's time for another edition of Lead Better, a chance to talk about today's field note from Admired Leadership. We're at 1646 in the 4.5 years of field notes. It's field note 1646. And our headline today, our title today, Leaders Quickly Reframe Negative Promotion Decisions. So we have a negative, there's a lot of actual pieces in there, right? Because you have to think about all right, a negative promotion decision. You don't get the promotion. Now I have to reframe it. Who has to reframe it? Leaders. So what do the good leaders do when they do this? And what they do is they decide to have a live podcast and they say, Mikey, I've got something to talk about.
Yeah. The perfect forum to let somebody down easy is a live podcast. No. So you've had the opportunities to do this. You've managed large teams yourself over the course of years where there were promotions being given and not given. Were you ever in a hierarchy situation where it felt like several of the team members that you were managing were all vying for the same spot?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got some practice with this. And as a result, because in my estimation, if we get to the point where this field note is needed, it probably means there's lots of other relational and conversational mistakes
that haven't happened.
Yeah.
Now, can I interject here? Because we are going to go through this field note where we talk about exactly how the leader should think about this conversation, where they're, if they care about this person, they want them on the team, they want them to do well. Well, how do you position this? But we actually were in a meeting earlier today, because Mikey and I are actually at one of our firm gatherings, where one of the points discussed was when many of our colleagues who are very senior, high-level leadership advisors work with some of the biggest corporations and leaders in the world of all kinds of organizations. And one of the things that they really, I guess I knew it, but I hadn't really comprehended the depth of it, which is how many organizations actively avoid these conversations.
Right. Yes.
Right? Where somebody needs feedback. Look, you need this feedback. You're not actually going to get to the next level. So what do? They're like, can we hire an executive coach to come in and actually tell this person this so that we don't have to?
Yeah.
That kind of blew me away that it's that much of an issue that it actually, one person in our firm said, it gave birth to the very nature of executive coaching as an industry.
Right.
That people don't want to talk about the difficult, awkward stuff.
And the names of these organizations would be ones that people would recognize.
Everybody would know.
These are common names.
It's just a policy.
And the culture inside of their organization is that leaders don't give negative feedback to team members. They just don't do that.
Now the reason is interesting. Which seemed to focus, and tell me if there was more depth to it than I'm remembering, but around it was many of these organizations have spent a great deal of time, money, effort to attract really high-level talent. And the war of not only attracting talent, but retaining that talent is really important. And so for some of these organizations, and again, we did hear it evolves. Like sometimes there's a period of time where that's really the command in the organization. Maybe that's not the case always, which is if your leader says you're not going to get this promotion, you're gonna be like, well, screw you, and you're gonna bolt and go to the competitor, right? So easier to have a coach come in and say, let's talk about your, how are things going at work? What kind of feedback are you getting? And it kind of softens it in a way, and the person can kind of work this out with the coach, and they can talk about all of these things. So the goal is not just to be like, we're avoiding this. The goal is actually we want to retain the talent, but it seems like a very odd way to do it.
It is, and I understand the goal as well, but the void that it creates is kind of relationship aspects that is so important in leadership. Like if you are just choosing to sidestep all difficult conversations because we don't want to risk losing anybody.
Right.
Half of what makes somebody an admired leader is kind of out the window then, right?
Right. And you often actually underline and bring this up over time, that this idea that here's a problem, but it's a sign that you had a bigger problem, because if you had been doing some of the basic work of being a good leader, you wouldn't be in this predicament.
Yes, and that's exactly where, if you're at the point where okay, they didn't get the promotion. How do I break it to them? And so this particular field note frames it as a single conversation. The best advice that we would give is that this is like an ongoing conversation that has never ended. And so by the time you get to the announcement, the person that we're talking about would have a pretty clear idea whether they are or are not getting this promotion. Saving it to the idea that, it's being, so we mentioned there's all kinds of room for multiple conversations. Right? If you're a layoff should always be at least a 2 conversation kind of predicament. But really, it should be a 4 conversation. It should be an ongoing conversation about letting somebody down in that kind of way. So it doesn't make any reasonable expectation that it works the same way on the opposite end. In promotions, it should be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, right.
But many people still are stuck here. So we should go through it. Like when you're stuck and you have to let somebody down and they're disappointed, whether it was early on in the conversation or before the announcement or whatever, how is it that you frame it in such a way in the way that the best leaders do?
Right. Now, what do you think about this idea in the field note that the leader may understand in the conversation that the team member is framing this conversation in a certain way, right? They've sort of defined the conversation. It means this, and the leader needs to reframe that conversation. I know that sounds a little bit, we're using some ooey gooey technical language in terms of framing and reframing and all of that. Is it that easy just to be like, because you can't be like, I reject your interpretation of this message. Like it's harder to do than just, let's reframe that.
Right. So the implication is that the person is crestfallen. That's one of the words that we use here. And even if you managed your own high level organization where you had 8 people on a team, 3 of those 8 were candidates for a promotion. One of them actually gets the promotion. The other 2, no matter how good they are, they have to frame it in such a way that says, I wasn't good enough. Now, that sounds harsh when we see it in black and white in the field note. But it is like, there's no arguing. There were 3 who wanted it, 2 didn't. They weren't good enough, right? So for a leader to be like,
and they're going to dwell on it.
Yeah, we have to reframe that in such a way. Now, there's a few mistakes that are mentioned in the field note that leaders often do. Like we go right to the idea of like, oh, the timing just wasn't right, or you actually are very talented, right? It doesn't make it any easier. As a matter of fact, it makes it worse, right? Because it sounds like what you're saying is not true. Because if all that you're saying to console me were actually true, then I should be in the conversation in a more active way about this promotion, but I didn't get it. So at the end of the day, I'm still not good enough, no matter what you're saying here.
Yeah. Now, the field note then says that it's helpful when a leader is saying, not yet, right? That like, you're not there right now. Maybe they're feeling like they're not good enough, but the leader can point to the things to say, not yet. Now, I guess the question is, how do you do that where it just doesn't sound like you're just saying it?
Right. Yeah. And that's where it needs to be an ongoing conversation. Not yet needs to be coupled with you have a plan in place, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have skills that need to be worked on. And if you're waiting to, evaluate somebody's lack of performance based on why they didn't get a promotion, and then you're giving them an action plan, that's kind of where the failure is.
And as the field note points out, identifying obstacles.
Right.
Like, here's what you've been dealing with. You're really good at this. I think you're not quite, Shirley's a little bit better than you are in this area, and that's why she got the position. But I think that you're going to be poised for tremendous growth, but we're going to maybe bring in a coach or maybe send you to a program, or we're going to give you more responsibility over a bigger part of the organization, whatever it might be. But here's how we're going to get past this obstacle.
Right. And so you should have been talking about Shirley with this person for a long time. Say, these are the skills that she has, and it looks likely that she's going to be the one. Like, no, it's not like a position is invented with a 3-month lead time, and then all of a sudden there's a competition that goes on. You need to be having these conversations. And that's going to be tough in some organizations that don't have the culture where those conversations are going on. It also brings up the idea that we've talked about several times. The number of direct reports you have is very important as to whether or not you're a quality manager or not.
Yeah, right.
I cannot imagine being able to have these kinds of ongoing conversations with 20 different people over the course of a year, right?
Yeah.
It really was managing the expectations of 8 people who were vying for one promotional spot. That's an enormous responsibility, right? So if you've got 20 direct reports,
sure,
how do you even meet with them weekly? How do you meet with them every other week?
Right.
That's quality. So the number of direct reports goes right to the bottom line of this conversation.
Yeah, and some of that is also then understanding that line of communication is not necessarily the 1 hour meeting. It's, are you creating opportunities for shorter but more important and sincere conversations? That may do it, and there's ways around that. Now, one of the things we would say in this field note, and in plenty of other areas of our content. How are you going forward? How are you kind of positioning this for where we're going? But the field note also talks about the opportunity for a leader to kind of position what had happened to themselves earlier in their career. And we sometimes do use that for in some of our behaviors for a leader to say, here's how I dealt with this challenge. But maybe in this specific case where you say, I remember at a time in my career where I thought I was up for this promotion. It went to this other person. Here's how it worked, and here's what I did, and here's how it ended up working out better. As a way of building, there's a connection and empathy. And I do think that might be valuable. But again, this is one of those areas that you really have to be thoughtful so that it doesn't come off as just a Band-Aid. You're being like, yes, you didn't get this position. I kind of know what that feels like. There has to be some depth and sincerity to it.
If you're only using it as a method to console somebody, as consolation, that's where it doesn't work, right?
Right.
If you're saying it, if you're anticipating you're probably not going to get this promotion, right? And you start all the forward thinking kind of ways, then you can use it at that point, right? As a means to challenge somebody for the future. But if you're like, I went through this disappointment as well, it doesn't make the person feel any better. It actually, and really at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is hang on to talent. You don't want them looking for another place to go simply because they missed one cycle of promotions. So as quickly as you can define for them what cycle you think they actually fit in, where they're going to actually get the promotion, how many years off that's going to be, and what we're going to do in order to hit that. So if you reevaluate that 18 months down the road and it feels like we're nowhere near that, then that's where you have that conversation. You don't wait until the 3-year mark and you've never talked about it since, and you have the person saying, you told me 3 years ago that we'd be done 3 years from now. Like, there's so many other problems in that.
They do, yeah.
That we need to have those talks.
And leaders need to be mindful that when people have expectations, and some of it might be, what expectations did you set that the person thought they were going to get the job?
Right, exactly.
And that's the part of this ongoing conversation. In one of the videos we have in our main playbook for our subscriber platform, one of our coaches tells the story about a situation on a trading desk where there's a young trader and she's expecting a promotion, but the coach has actually talked with the leader and knows that promotion's not coming, right? And in fact, I think that the coach was coaching that leader who was talking to the person that was the trader expecting the conversation and saying, here's how you need to have this series of conversations, and here's where you need to set expectations. And later, the coach runs into this person on the trading floor and just kind of says, well, how's it going, right? Open-ended, trying to kind of feel where the conversation's gone. And what she hears is, great. And she goes, oh, really? Tell me about that. And she says, yes, I just talked with my leader. I'm on track. Everything's great. And that part's good, except that the leader didn't clearly signal that this person was not going to get that promotion then.
She didn't deliver the message at all.
She did not deliver the message. And so you got to be careful in this series of conversations that you're really getting it all out there.
Right. The final quote that I think is extremely quotable. I don't know if you were responsible for editing it this way or if it just came to us this way, but nothing ventilates the mind like a plan of action.
Yeah,
Ventilating
right.
the mind is a great word
It
picture.
is a great image, and that's it. Because people are going to get inside their own heads. They're going to feel self-doubt. They're going to feel disappointment. It's a real thing that you feel. And you as a leader, you've got responsibility to the organization, the people that you want to get in the right position to turn out the right results. But ultimately, it's you are a bit of a guardian of the dreams of the people on your team. And you've taken on the responsibility of doing that, of being that dream guardian for them. So you can't let this just be another thing. You didn't get it, get over it, let's move on. It has to have a little more depth there, and helping that person ventilate the mind, see the plan of action. That's great for them, and it's also great for you.
Yeah, perfect. All right. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Indeed. See you, Mike.